Welcome back to a video demonstration of how to paint a cottage. Now I'm going to make this one much more simple than the last one. I've had a few requests. We're going to keep it really simple, just painting in the overall shapes. The tree will be done simply. You'll see where the light's coming from, and hopefully for those that find it a little bit that are starting out, this will be a lot clearer for them. Okay, first I'm going to start mixing cadmium yellow. And to that I'm going to add some Windsor blue to make a nice green. This is for my tree, obviously. I'm going to mix up, what I'm going to do is mix up two different values, two different tones of the same green. This one's going to be a lot lighter. So a little bit more Windsor blue, just to darken it down slightly. Okay, that's too dark, so I'll have to add a little bit more yellow, just to lighten it up again. Just keep adjusting the colours. Now, this is where the light source is coming in. It's coming straight in from the left as you're looking at it. So you can see that part of the barn will be in shadow, that part of the barn, the eave, will be in shadow. That side of the tree. Okay, let's start painting the tree now. Using the side of the brush, I'm just going to start sketching in the tree. Just draw the brush down nice and gently. Don't worry too much, just get the overall shape of the tree, leaving a few little sky holes so the tree's not one solid mass of foliage, and work your way down to the bottom. Now I'm going to start adding some darker green with the darker mix to add a little bit more shadow to the tree. And again, add a bit more Windsor blue to the mix, and maybe a bit of a touch of cadmium red, just a touch. I find that mutes the green slightly. And there we go. That's all you got to do. Just dab the paint in. It's like a wet in wet technique. The paint bleeds out, and you get a good effect. Now we move to the right hand side, but we'll paint the other little tree. I'll just use a much paler colour for that, slightly in the distance, not as much detail. Just sketch it in loosely, and then a few dabs of the darker mixture just to indicate the shadow. Now I'm going to paint the foreground. I'm just going to use a mix of yellow ochre for this and a touch of magenta, just to block in the shapes, because I want to keep this really simple for you so you can see how the colour, and then you know, as you become more confident, you can sort of branch out and add more colours, but it's just a yellowy green colour. Make sure you leave the path in, so that takes your eye into the painting, leads your eye up to the cottage. Try not to touch the tree because it's still very wet, like I just have. You can lift that out with a dry brush. Our brush is still too wet. Dry it off a bit more and lift that out. Not a problem. There you go. That's fine. Now I'm going to start painting the roof of the cottage. Just a little bit of yellow ochre with a little bit of burnt sienna. You can use other colours, you know, other mixes, it doesn't really matter. As long as the colour looks right to you, then go with it. Just loosely, so I'm not worrying too much about going up to the edge, I'm just blocking the overall shape in, keeping it loose and free. That lean-to roof, just block that in. There we go. Excuse me. Now I'm going to look at painting the a bit more detail on the tree, just to indicate a little bit of foliage. Not a lot. It's just a subtle suggestion of foliage. a few little dabs of the brush here and there. Not too much. If you overdo it, it will look wrong. So it's just a few little marks, that's all. Now we need to look at the trunk of the tree. For this, it's a bit of burnt sienna and cobalt blue. That's the mix I would use. Others might use slightly different, but for me that's what I use. Now don't get the trunk too thick, because if you get the trunk thick, the tree will look completely wrong. Now we want to put in some branches, and I'm going to use the rigger for the branches. Just drawing the branches up. There you go. Not too many, just indicate a few branches just to show that they're there. The viewer's eyes will do the rest. We just have to suggest it, because obviously we all know there's branches in trees, and it's just a suggestion. If you overdo it, it will look wrong. And a few little branches in the far right tree. The rigger's a fantastic brush, and it's a must-have in all painting kits, in my opinion. It's a great brush. It's probably one of the brushes I use most of the time for detailed work, for branches and stuff, and outlining. Okay, just a few little dabs of paint on here, just the lighter green to indicate the leaves. Now I think we need to look at the cottage. We're going to mix the shadows up for the cottage. I'm going to use cobalt blue, yellow ochre, and some cadmium red. Now this is how I do it. I don't mix them all together, don't blend them all together. Have the three separate colours in the mixing well. There's a bit of yellow ochre with the cadmium red. And then instead of mixing the whole lot together, just pull in the different aspects of pieces of different colour together. You'll get the feel for this over time, but you get much nicer mixes on the paper when they're not all combined together. A bit warmer in places, so we just add a little bit more yellow to it. Well, that's that end done. And this will give the cottage a real sense of shape and make it look more solid. The side of the roof, I'm using the same colour for all the shadows on the cottage, the windows at the same time. You can get so much down with watercolour so quickly when you become, confident with the colour. Don't forget to do under the eaves of the cottage. That really places the roof nicely on, makes it look really solid. A little bit more darker mix for the doorways. This is just back to the burnt sienna and cobalt blue, just indicating a few fences, to give it a little bit more detail. Just little lines, that's all it is. A little window there, just darken the doorway up a little bit. The windows. Well, that's done really. Okay, now we just got to do a little bit more to the foreground, maybe just to balance the painting up. The cottage is done. All the detail, a little bit of detail we've done to it, it's all finished. What we want to do now is just add another wash over the foreground, just over the yellow ochre we did, so we can just use a wash of yellow ochre, a touch of cad red, and a little bit of cobalt blue, just to grey it out slightly over the foreground. You don't really have to do this. I just think it will benefit from it slightly. It just adds a little bit of texture. I'm using the brush in different directions just to add a little bit of texture. Now we have to do the shadow for the tree, to make the tree look like it's actually anchored to the land. That's just cobalt blue, yellow ochre, and a little touch of cad red, just by the side of the cottage, the other little tree. Now I need to think about the sky. I'm just going to put a wash of a grey blue into the sky. There we go. just paint around the white areas. Just imagine clouds and paint around them. Paint around the tree loosely, keep it loose and sort of expressive. This is kind of an impressionistic style painting. Well, thank you ever so much for watching. If you enjoyed this little video, please like and subscribe. Yeah, so like and subscribe. If you have any comments, please leave a message and I will do my best to answer you back. Perhaps I can even, any suggestions for any videos, yeah, I can have a go at making them. Thanks again and happy painting. Bye for now.